Welcome to This Explainer, everyone. Today, we're diving straight into one of the absolute most foundational texts in all of Islamic history. We're taking a purely educational, impartial look at exactly how it structures theology and human behavior. We're talking about Sahih Muslim, and specifically, we're zooming in on its very first book, the Book of Faith, or Kitab al-Iman. Our goal today? To look directly at what the source material actually says. We're going to unpack this dense, ancient text and put it into a clear, understandable framework.
Now, to really grasp the immense historical weight of this text, you have to consider this massive number, 300,000. That's the number of historical reports, or a hadith, which are the sayings and deeds of Prophet Muhammad, that were evaluated for this compilation. 300,000. But out of that staggering number, only about 4,000 actually made it into this definitive collection. You might be wondering, why such a huge drop? Well, it's because of their incredibly rigorous criteria. Every single report had to be painstakingly checked against the Quran. Plus, the chain of reporters who passed down the saying, it had to be absolutely unequivocally verified. It's essentially an ancient, highly meticulous fact-checking process. Okay, so here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the compiling of Sahih Muslim, defining Islam and faith, the branches of belief, social conduct and hypocrisy, and finally, major sins and their consequences. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. Compiling Sahih Muslim.
The monumental effort behind this text was spearheaded by a man named Abul Hussein Muslim bin al-Hajjaj al-Nisapuri. Born in 202 AH, this guy didn't just sit around in a library all day. He traveled extensively across the entire Middle East. We're talking Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Syria, and Egypt. Living a couple of centuries after the Prophet's death, he literally went from city to city interviewing scholars, verifying the veracity of reporters, and cross-checking every single saying to make absolutely sure it was authentic. He dedicated his entire life to this massive undertaking until he passed away in 261 AH.
Moving right along to Section 2, Defining Islam and Faith.
So, moving from the history to the core theology, the text recounts a very famous interaction, often called the Hadith of Gabriel, which establishes its foundational definitions. According to the text, the prophet was approached by a man in incredibly pure white clothes with extraordinarily black hair. This man, who was later revealed to be the angel Gabriel, asks him to define key religious concepts. And this interaction gives us a beautiful juxtaposition. On one hand, you have al-Islam, which is defined entirely by physical, external actions, testifying to the oneness of God, establishing prayer, paying the zakat or poor rate, fasting during Ramadan, and performing the Hajj pilgrimage. But then, on the other hand, you have al-Iman, or faith, which is defined by deeply held internal convictions, having faith in Allah, the angels, the holy books, the apostles, the day of judgment, and the divine decree of good and evil. So it really boils down to one is what you do, and the other is what you believe.
But wait, there's more. The text introduces a third, highly demanding concept during this interaction, al-Ihsan. It defines this as worshiping Allah as if you were seeing him, adding that, hey, even though you don't see him, he verily sees you. This is essentially the ultimate benchmark of spiritual mindfulness within the text. It's not just about going through the motions or just holding the beliefs in your head. It's about a constant, hyper-aware state of presence and doing good deeds.
Now, how does the everyday person actually follow these rules? The source material uses strategic repetition here, featuring multiple anecdotes of Bedouins, desert dwellers, coming up to the prophet to ask exactly that. In one really striking story, a man from Nejd with disheveled hair asks what is strictly obligated of him. When he's told about the 5 daily prayers, the fasting, and the charity, he swears, "By him in whose hand is my life, I will never add anything to it, nor will I diminish anything from it." And the prophet's response is fascinating. He confirms that this simple, strict commitment actually guarantees success. It's a crystal clear message in the text. Mastering the basics is entirely sufficient.
All right, Section 3, The Branches of Belief.
The text also makes it abundantly clear that internal faith, al-Iman, isn't just a simple binary switch that's either on or off. Actually, faith is explicitly broken down into over 70 branches. Just look at the vast spectrum here. The absolute highest branch is the profound theological declaration that there is no God but Allah. But as you move down the ladder, it incorporates personal character. It defines modesty, for example, as a core ingredient that brings forth calmness of mind. And perhaps most surprisingly, the humblest branch of faith isn't a prayer or a ritual at all. It's the simple civic act of removing something injurious from the path. So your deeply held theological belief is literally tied directly to public safety and personal humility. How cool is that?
That brings us to Section 4, Social Conduct and Hypocrisy.
This natural flow takes us right from internal theology into everyday practice. The text is literally a blueprint for social cohesion, laying out exactly how a believer is expected to behave in everyday society. It flat out states that a person doesn't truly believe until they love for their neighbor what they love for themselves. It goes even further, saying a person won't enter paradise if their neighbor isn't secure from their wrongful conduct. Basically, the text elevates hospitality, neighborliness, and holding your tongue, speaking good words, or just remaining silent, to the exact same level as a religious obligation. And this brilliantly illustrates the strict flip side. If good social conduct is the ultimate proof of faith, well, what's the proof of hypocrisy? According to Sahih Muslim, a hypocrite isn't necessarily just someone who skips their prayers. No, it's defined by deceitful and damaging social behaviors. The signs of a hypocrite are lying when they speak, acting treacherously when making a promise, betraying trust, and deviating from the truth during an argument. The text explicitly notes that these social betrayals make someone a hypocrite, even if they observe their fasts and constantly assert they're a Muslim. Continuing with this theme, the compilation acts almost like a strict rulebook for community trust. Any actions that tear at the social fabric are harshly penalized. Carrying tales and rumors, the text says that person shall not enter paradise. Abusing another Muslim, labeled a complete outrage. And fighting them is deemed unbelief. Even claiming false parentage knowingly to someone other than your real father is strictly forbidden. The text is just deeply concerned with preserving truth, loyalty, and peace within the broader community.
And finally, Section 5, Major Sins and Consequences.
So now we move from the macro level of general social rules down to the micro level of individual transgression, examining what the text considers the absolute gravest offenses a person can possibly commit. When directly asked what the most grievous sin is, the prophet outlined 3 specific actions. First, associating a partner with Allah, which is the ultimate theological betrayal. Then, killing your child out of fear of sharing food. And committing adultery with a neighbor's wife. We see a very clear blend here. The worst possible offenses mix crimes against God with extreme, intimate betrayals against family and the community. This whole framework culminates in what's called the 7 noxious things that believers are commanded to avoid entirely. This list includes associating anything with Allah and practicing magic, but it also includes grave economic and social crimes, consuming an orphan's property, dealing in usury or exploitative interest, fleeing from battle, and slandering chaste, unwary women. It's fascinating because the text treats financial exploitation and destroying a woman's reputation with the exact same strict severity as fleeing a battlefield or practicing sorcery. Now, the text is also exceptionally severe when it comes to suicide. It outlines a really stark consequence. A person will be tormented in the afterlife with the exact method they used to end their own life. To illustrate this, the source material shares an incredibly intense narrative about a fighter named Klausman. He fought desperately and bravely in battle, but was severely wounded. Unable to bear the pain, he placed his sword on the ground and pressed his chest against it to hasten his own death. Despite his undeniable bravery in combat, the text records the prophet stating he was doomed to the fire. This serves as a powerful illustration of the strict requirement to submit entirely to divine decree, no matter the physical pain. Ultimately, Sahih Muslim leaves us pondering a massive question of balance. This ancient text attempts to rigidly govern both visible societal actions and the invisible, unshakable depths of the human heart. It presents a worldview where picking up a harmful object from the road is intrinsically linked to the highest theological concepts of the universe. So, what do you think is the ultimate driver of human behavior? Is it the internal belief or the external practice? Think about that for a bit. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.